There is a sobering reality we must face. Peace is fragile. It is not simply the absence of noise, nor is it the absence of trouble. True peace is the inner stillness that allows a person to walk with clarity, faith, and conviction, even in the midst of storms. Yet, how easily it is stolen. Many spend years seeking peace through success, money, or even solitude, but the real thieves are often closer than we think. They wear familiar faces, they walk in our circles, and sometimes they even sit across our tables. Peace is not always lost through catastrophe. It is drained, bit by bit, through people who carry with them the seeds of unrest. Tonight, I want to expose 7 types of people who quietly, persistently, and sometimes aggressively destroy your peace. This is not about judging others, but about discerning wisely. Scripture tells us to guard our hearts, for out of them flow the issues of life. To guard your heart, you must recognize the intruders. If you find your joy always under attack, if your spirit feels heavy when certain individuals enter your space, perhaps it is because you have not yet identified the peace destroyers in your midst. 1. The constant complainer, draining your spirit with negativity. The constant complainer is not always loud, but they are always present. They carry with them an atmosphere that can suffocate the joy out of any room they enter. Their words drip with dissatisfaction, whether it be about the weather, their health, their job, or the people around them. They have an uncanny ability to find the flaw in every blessing and the shadow in every light. The danger of the constant complainer is not simply that they express unhappiness, but that their spirit is contagious. Just as a single rotten apple in a basket can spoil the others, so too can their grumbling poison the atmosphere of your heart if left unchecked. When you sit with them, you may begin to notice your own thoughts turning sour, your own gratitude slipping away, and your faith starting to falter. Complaining is not a harmless habit. It is a declaration that what God has provided is not enough. When you keep company with someone who constantly complains, you are being trained to adopt the same lens through which they view the world. Instead of lifting your eyes to what is good and praiseworthy, you begin to mirror their discontentment. This slow erosion of gratitude destroys peace, because peace cannot coexist with a heart that is always murmuring. A complainer is like a leaky faucet dripping endlessly in the night. It may seem small at first, but over time it can drive you to frustration, robbing you of rest and stillness. The danger becomes greater because the constant complainer rarely accepts correction. If you offer solutions, they quickly dismiss them, for their goal is not to resolve, but to rehearse. If you redirect their focus to blessings, they return to rehearsing their wounds. Their satisfaction lies in being dissatisfied, and that creates a cycle that can pull you into despair. You may begin to feel responsible for fixing their unhappiness, only to realize it cannot be fixed. For they are not looking for healing, but for an audience. Guarding your peace against such a person requires discernment and boundaries. Compassion is not the same as captivity. You can care for them, pray for them, and even listen for a time, but you must recognize when their words begin to plant seeds in your own heart. Gratitude must be your shield. When you find yourself in the presence of a complainer, make it your discipline to recall the goodness of God in your life, to rehearse the blessings instead of the burdens, and to resist the temptation to echo their tone. A peaceful spirit is not sustained by perfect circumstances, but by a grateful heart. To remain anchored in peace, you must learn to limit the influence of constant complainers. Choose to spend time with those who speak life, who give thanks, and who magnify hope rather than despair. The complainer will always be among us, but their voice does not need to rule us. Peace is preserved when gratitude has the final word. 2. The master manipulator, twisting truth to control your steps. The master manipulator is far more dangerous than the complainer because their influence is subtle and calculated. They rarely appear threatening at first glance. In fact, they often present themselves as helpful, understanding, or even deeply caring. But beneath the surface lies a desire to control, to bend others to their will, and to shape situations for their own advantage. The manipulator thrives not by brute force, but by weaving webs of guilt, fear, and flattery. They study the weaknesses of those around them and exploit them with precision. They know exactly what words to say to make you doubt yourself, hesitate in your decisions, or surrender your convictions. They operate like a puppeteer, pulling strings you cannot always see, until you realize your peace has been stolen and your choices no longer feel like your own. The most unsettling part of manipulation is that it masquerades as guidance. The manipulator often cloaks their motives under the pretense of concern. They may say they only want what's best for you, but their advice somehow always serves their interests. They can twist your words, distort your intentions, and create confusion that leaves you second-guessing your own judgment. This constant undermining erodes peace because you no longer feel secure in your own discernment. When you are always wondering if you are being deceived, trust evaporates, and without trust, peace cannot survive. Manipulators also thrive on dependency. They want you to feel as though you cannot function without their wisdom or approval. They are quick to point out your mistakes, but slow to affirm your strengths. This creates a subtle captivity in which you begin to lean on them for validation. Over time, their voice replaces your own, and their influence drowns out the still small voice of truth within you. This is why the manipulator is so dangerous. They do not simply steal your peace for a moment. They attempt to build a system in which your peace is perpetually tethered to their control. Breaking free from the manipulator requires courage and clarity. You must be willing to step back and ask hard questions. Who benefits most from the decisions I am making? Do I feel empowered after speaking with this person, or do I feel drained and uncertain? True guidance brings freedom, not bondage. True counsel affirms your dignity and equips you to stand stronger, not weaker. When you begin to discern the patterns of manipulation, you must set boundaries that protect your heart and your mind. That may mean limiting access, refusing to engage in arguments that twist your words, and refusing to carry guilt that is not yours to bear. Above all, you must return to the anchor of truth. Peace comes when your choices are aligned with conviction, not coercion. The manipulator seeks to steal that alignment, but you can reclaim it by standing firm in what is right, even if it costs you approval. Peace is not found in pleasing the manipulator, but in breaking their grip and choosing the freedom of integrity. 3. The perpetual critic, wounding instead of sharpening. The perpetual critic is the voice that never rests. No matter what you do, no matter how well you perform, no matter how sincere your intentions may be, they will always find something to dissect, to diminish, or to condemn. Unlike constructive criticism, which builds up and sharpens character, the critic wounds under the guise of honesty. They are skilled at disguising their negativity as just being real or only trying to help, but their words rarely leave you stronger. Instead, they leave you second-guessing yourself, doubting your abilities, and questioning your worth. Over time, their relentless scrutiny chips away at confidence until peace feels impossible. The critic thrives on control through disapproval. They are uncomfortable with others experiencing joy or contentment because their own hearts are restless. By pointing out flaws, they maintain a sense of superiority, convincing themselves they are wiser or more discerning than others. They magnify imperfections, often ignoring the progress, effort, or beauty present in a situation. For them, nothing is ever quite good enough. This spirit of fault-finding seeps into the atmosphere like a toxin, slowly poisoning hope and replacing it with discouragement. Peace cannot breathe where constant criticism reigns, because criticism creates an environment of fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of never measuring up. One of the most damaging aspects of living under the shadow of a critic is that their voice can become internalized. What starts as their words eventually becomes your own inner dialogue. You may begin to preemptively attack yourself, anticipating what they would say before they even speak. You rehearse their disapproval in your mind and find yourself trapped in an endless cycle of striving to meet a standard that always shifts just out of reach. This inner critic, born from their relentless judgment, robs you of rest and joy. It whispers that nothing you do will ever be enough, and in believing it, you lose the ability to celebrate progress, to receive encouragement, or to rest in peace. The only way to disarm the perpetual critic is to recognize their voice for what it is, a weapon, not a truth. Criticism that tears down without offering hope is not wisdom, it is bondage. Guarding your peace means refusing to let their words define your worth. It requires drawing a line and saying, "Your perspective does not hold final authority over my life." Peace is preserved when you stop seeking validation from those who are determined never to give it. Instead, anchor yourself in truth. Surround yourself with those who encourage, who correct with kindness, and who speak life rather than drain it. Learn to celebrate small victories and to acknowledge progress even when it is imperfect. Peace grows in an atmosphere of grace, not constant judgment. When you encounter the perpetual critic, do not hand them the keys to your confidence. Their words may sting, but they cannot destroy unless you allow them to take root. By refusing to live under the weight of their disapproval, you reclaim the freedom to walk in peace, even when criticism surrounds you. 4. The chaos carrier, thriving on drama and disorder. The chaos carrier is the person who seems to bring a storm wherever they go. Their presence unsettles, their choices disrupt, and their energy leaves trails of confusion behind them. They are magnets for drama, and if there is none around, they will create it. Peace cannot coexist with constant chaos, for chaos thrives on disorder, urgency, and distraction. The chaos carrier operates like a whirlwind, sweeping up those near them into situations that were never theirs to bear. They rarely take responsibility for the turmoil that follows them. Instead, they excuse it, minimize it, or even blame others for the destruction they leave behind. The danger of the chaos carrier lies in their unpredictability. One moment they may seem calm, and the next they erupt in emotional outbursts, reckless decisions, or reckless words. They thrive in an atmosphere of instability because stability exposes their inability to manage themselves. When everything is calm, their inner unrest becomes more visible, so they stir the waters to keep attention diverted. This constant upheaval wears down your peace because you begin to live in a state of hyper-awareness, always bracing for the next explosion or crisis. Living in such proximity to disorder trains your heart to remain unsettled, as though chaos is the norm and calm is only temporary. The chaos carrier also has a way of recruiting others into their storms. They involve you in problems that are not yours to solve, expecting you to carry the weight of their poor decisions. They draw you into conflicts, stir division between friends, and thrive on the energy of others reacting to their drama. If you are not discerning, you may find yourself losing precious time and emotional energy trying to put out fires that they intentionally or carelessly ignited. The more you give, the more they demand, until your peace is consumed in the endless cycle of cleaning up after them. Guarding your peace against the chaos carrier requires the courage to disengage. You cannot bring order to someone who thrives on disorder. You cannot fix what they refuse to face within themselves. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, but of survival. That may mean refusing to be pulled into arguments, stepping back when they demand your involvement in their problems, and resisting the urge to become their rescuer. Their chaos does not have to dictate the rhythm of your life. True peace is rooted in order, clarity, and focus. When you distance yourself from chaos, you create space for your mind and spirit to breathe. The chaos carrier will always insist their emergency is your responsibility, but wisdom teaches you to discern the difference between compassion and captivity. You can care for someone without being consumed by their storm. Protecting your peace means standing firm in the calm that God has given you, even when others choose to live in perpetual unrest. Peace is not found by controlling the storm around you, but by refusing to let that storm enter your soul. 5. The silent betrayer, smiling outwardly but undermining inwardly. The silent betrayer is one of the most painful peace destroyers because their weapon is not open confrontation but hidden disloyalty. They present themselves as a friend, an ally, or even a confidant, yet behind the scenes they whisper, undermine, or position themselves against you. Unlike the critic who wounds with open words, or the chaos carrier who disrupts with visible disorder, the silent betrayer works in shadows. Their betrayal is subtle, sometimes so quiet that you only recognize it after trust has already been fractured. This is why their impact on peace is so devastating. You gave them access to your heart, only to discover that access was misused. The silent betrayer feeds on proximity. They need to be close enough to know your strengths and weaknesses, to hear your unguarded thoughts, and to gain your confidence. They appear supportive in public, nodding in agreement and offering affirmation, but privately they may question your motives, spread doubt, or share information you entrusted to them in confidence. Their silence is not the silence of wisdom, but the silence of duplicity, holding back their true feelings until the moment they can use them to their advantage. That kind of duplicity erodes peace because it undermines the foundation of trust, and without trust, relationships crumble into suspicion and fear. The betrayal itself may not always be explosive. Sometimes it is small compromises, a confidence broken, an opportunity sabotaged, or loyalty withheld in a moment when it mattered most. But even the smallest betrayals create lasting scars. You begin to wonder who can truly be trusted, and you second-guess the sincerity of those around you. Peace is lost when your heart becomes guarded not out of discernment, but out of fear that every friend could turn into another silent betrayer. The damage is not only relational, but internal, because betrayal plants seeds of bitterness and cynicism that choke out joy and stillness. Yet even here, there is wisdom to be gained. Betrayal, as painful as it is, often reveals where your ultimate trust has been misplaced. No human being, no matter how loyal, can hold the weight of absolute trust without faltering. When the silent betrayer is exposed, it reminds you that true peace cannot be anchored in people, but must be anchored in truth and in God's unchanging faithfulness. People may fail, but peace rooted in something higher than human loyalty can endure the sting of betrayal without being destroyed by it. Guarding against the silent betrayer requires discernment and patience. Do not give untested loyalty the same weight as proven character. Pay attention to actions more than words, and when betrayal is revealed, do not allow bitterness to take root. Forgiveness does not mean renewed access, but it does mean refusing to let their silence echo endlessly in your soul. Peace returns when you release the wound into the hands of the one who sees in secret and who judges righteously. The silent betrayer may steal trust for a time, but they cannot steal the peace of one who has anchored their heart in what cannot be shaken. 6. The envious companion, resenting your blessings instead of rejoicing in them. The envious companion is perhaps one of the most deceptive peace destroyers because they often disguise themselves as a supporter while quietly resenting the very blessings they applaud. At first glance, they may appear to celebrate your victories, but beneath the smile lies a heart unsettled by your progress. Instead of rejoicing with you, they compare, they measure, and they silently compete. Envy is corrosive. It eats away at relationships, trust, and harmony. It cannot coexist with peace because envy is never satisfied. No matter what you share, no matter how generous you are, the envious companion sees what you have as a reminder of what they lack. Their presence in your life can leave you feeling as though you must minimize your joy, conceal your success, or apologize for your blessings just to keep the relationship intact. The envious companion thrives on subtle digs and passive comments. They may never openly attack, but their words carry a sting designed to pull you down to their level of discontent. If you succeed, they find ways to minimize it. If you share a dream, they question its feasibility. If you shine, they look for the shadow. This quiet undermining erodes your peace because it forces you to walk on eggshells, always cautious about what to share. Instead of resting in the freedom to be yourself, you begin to filter your words, diminish your excitement, and silence your gratitude to protect their fragile pride. What makes envy especially toxic is that it often masquerades as closeness. The envious companion needs proximity to compare themselves to you. They linger near enough to watch your steps, measure your blessings, and feed the fire of dissatisfaction within them. Yet their discontentment has nothing to do with you. It is a reflection of their own unhealed heart. Still, if unchecked, their spirit of envy can plant seeds of guilt within you, convincing you that your blessings are a burden to others. Peace cannot flourish in such an environment because peace requires freedom, and envy seeks to bind that freedom with guilt and shame. The wise response to the envious companion is not to dim your light, but to recognize the source of their unrest. You are not responsible for the envy they harbor. You are responsible for protecting the peace entrusted to you. That may mean creating distance, being selective in what you share, or even confronting the subtle undercurrents when necessary. You cannot allow envy to dictate how boldly you live or how gratefully you acknowledge your blessings. Gratitude must always outshine guilt. True peace comes when you learn to rejoice without restraint, regardless of who celebrates with you or who resents you. Surround yourself with those who can genuinely delight in your success, who see your blessings not as a threat, but as proof of what is possible. The envious companion may never learn to celebrate you, but you can choose not to surrender your joy to their bitterness. Peace is preserved when you refuse to carry envy's weight and instead walk freely in the abundance given to you, without apology and without fear. 7. The spiritual pretender. Using a cloak of faith to sow confusion. The spiritual pretender is one of the most subtle and dangerous destroyers of peace because they wear the cloak of faith without embodying its truth. On the surface, they may appear devout, knowledgeable, or deeply committed, but beneath the surface lies a heart motivated not by genuine devotion, but by pride, control, or self-interest. They speak the right words, know the right phrases, and can even quote scripture with ease, but their fruit does not align with their appearance. The spiritual pretender thrives on impression, not transformation. They want to be seen as spiritual rather than actually walking in humility before God, and this duplicity leaves a trail of confusion for those who trust them. The danger of the spiritual pretender is that they distort what is sacred. They use spiritual language to justify their actions, even when those actions bring harm. They manipulate by cloaking personal agendas in the language of divine will, leading others to doubt their own discernment. They can create guilt where there should be freedom, fear where there should be faith, and confusion where there should be clarity. This is devastating to peace because it attacks the very foundation of trust in what is true. When someone presents themselves as a representative of spiritual truth but lives in contradiction to it, those around them are left disillusioned, hurt, and unsure of whom to believe. Another hallmark of the spiritual pretender is performance. Their devotion is often loudest in public, but nearly absent in private. They want recognition for their supposed spirituality, whether through titles, positions, or the admiration of others. They thrive on being needed, appearing wise, and having influence, but when tested, their foundation quickly crumbles because it was never built on authenticity. This hypocrisy unsettles peace because it brings division and skepticism into communities that should be marked by unity and trust. When pretenders hold influence, they leave behind brokenness instead of healing because they sought their own glory instead of God's. Guarding your peace against the spiritual pretender requires both discernment and courage. Not everyone who uses spiritual language speaks with sincerity. Not every teacher, mentor, or guide has pure motives. Test the fruit, not just the words. Watch how they treat others when no one is watching. Observe whether their presence brings humility and peace or confusion and pride. True spirituality always produces gentleness, patience, kindness, and integrity, while pretense always leaves an aftertaste of unrest. When you identify a pretender, protect your heart by refusing to give them undue influence over your decisions or your view of God. The antidote to the spiritual pretender is not cynicism, but authenticity. Do not allow their hypocrisy to rob you of faith or to harden your heart against truth. Instead, let it drive you deeper into seeking what is real and eternal. Peace cannot thrive in a faith built on appearances, but it flourishes in a faith anchored in sincerity. The pretender may fool many, but they cannot counterfeit the stillness and clarity that come from genuine truth. Your peace remains secure when you walk in authenticity yourself and anchor your trust in the one who sees beyond all appearances.